Okay, well, welcome to our May Roy Talks. I'll start by just thanking our sponsors for their contributions and support of emerging artists at Roy, Ohio Arts Council, Greater Columbus Arts Council, the Columbus Foundation, and COVA. And today's conversation will be just that, conversation about your work, a little bit about where Roy fits into your trajectory, some observations that we have about the work and some connections that we've been talking about, and then feel free to ask each other questions. We'll monitor the chat. If people have questions, we'll include those too. And thank you very much for your patience as we try this. We are in a hybrid situation. So we have some people in the studio audience, as it were, who may or may not also have questions. And then we have people who will be tuning in on Zoom. So we'll just start, if you are comfortable, introducing yourself and talk a little bit about the work that's here at Roy until June 3rd. And we can begin anywhere, whoever wants to start off.
Okay. So mostly I draw it in my sketchbook because it's easy and it goes with me everywhere. It's like a comfort object and it keeps me grounded, because otherwise I just like disassociate and just zone out, which you'll notice me doing. If you just look at me, I'll just completely withdraw in my own little imaginary world. Most of these drawings were done while my dad was sick with cancer, so that was a real trip, and he passed away right before the COVID shutdown started. So it's like the whole grief journey. It's like you're waiting for things to go back to normal, and then they never do, and then it becomes less normal. And so most of this work just reflects on the cancer, like the 5-year fight he had with it, and then the isolation that comes afterwards. And I like details and gouache and pencils. Oh, I'm Alejandro. Thanks, because I forgot that like people don't know my name. Like I know my name very well. My name is Alejandro Bellizzi. I live in Westerville / Columbus. I don't feel comfortable like letting people know I live in Westerville for some reason, because it's like I don't want to be in suburbia. I want to relive my glory days from CCAD, living in downtown. It's like, I have a life. It's so vivid, colorful.
We're not judging you for that.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
I'm judging myself.
Jared, can you pick up where Alejandro left off?
Yeah, so I'm Cru Smith. My work in the show is based around a lot of found objects and kind of portraits of time, I would say. And just kind of this way of finding relationships of materials or objects for each piece, and just a combination of processes for making that work. Really, pretty short, I guess.
Okay, stop there. Michael, you're next.
Sure. I'm Michael Coppage. I live in Cincinnati, and my work here is part of a larger body of work entitled American Plus. American Plus is kind of a adverse response to African American. African American, African minus American implies that my American is somehow less. So the plus speaks to some of the resilience, like in the African and African American experience here in our country. And so all of the paintings are depictions of scenes from contemporary America that create kind of parallels to the past and kind of create a cultural criticism, if you will.
Yeah, great. So we talked a little bit previously about Roy and how it works. It's a juried space, so you all applied for exhibition here, and then our jurors convened and chose your work, and then our curatorial team put the works together in different configurations for exhibition. So this happens to be 3 people showing in the same space. And we noticed some overlapping themes and some ideas and even some aesthetics of your work. But I wonder, now that you see your work together in this space, are you seeing some similarities? There's some meditative movements in the work that you do and the processes that you have, and sort of those larger, that sort of larger theme. But I wonder, did you see some similarities or some connections in your work as you were installing, and now that you've spent some time with it?
Well, I think we talked about this a little bit yesterday, and we all had different like answers to that question.
Mhm.
But today we talked about it some more, and one of the things that really rang true is that all the work, I think Alejandro might have a longer arc, but most of this work was created in the same time period during the pandemic and during quarantine and all of that stuff. And we all had decisions that we had to make based on the realities that we faced in our lives and in our practice. And so the work is kind of a reflection of that experience in a lot of ways. And I think I don't know that it's obvious for me, the golden thread that ties us together, but the more we talk, the more it makes sense.
Yeah, maybe just that shutdown, that reflection, that turning your focus inward and exploring some things that maybe you hadn't before, or took you in a different path or whatever. So yeah, Jared.
Yeah, like as we're talking today, I was thinking the same thing, but like my first conclusion was kind of like these different portraits in a way. It's like, I feel like mine is kind of more of this like physical portrait, like abstract physical portrait of just the body. And then Alejandro is more kind of like this mental portrait. And I was even thinking like Michael's is more kind of like this like racial portrait. So it's like, it's almost like the mind, body, and the spirit to me. So.
Alejandro, something to add to that?
I feel like at first I thought about the commonality or the connection of like materials. Just because especially like in my submission, like I had more like my absurd sculptural kind of work. And I was like, oh, he uses wood, we use wood, we are the same. And then with Michael's work, I felt there was a connection with just like having a strong voice, like a strong critical biting tone. And that might not be visible in just my regular drawings, but it's definitely present in the way I write and speak about art. So I feel like I have even less of like a connecting golden thread, but like I always see connections. It's like, yes, we are all somehow kindred spirits here.
Yeah, I think you all are making some comments as you suggest, and even the titles that you use, Alejandro, have a moment of that, right? Where you're making a comment about what's happening around you, and there's some wry humor and some fighting moments in some of your titles as well. So yeah, I'm not sure about your practices. How do you all spend time creating artwork? What is your practice for doing that? Something every day? I know yesterday I think you talked, Michael, about the number of days it took to create this work, right? Yeah. And so do you work every day in the same way? Do you have a couple different projects going on at the same time? How do you work? Because we talked a little bit, Jared, about your process, and I was asking what comes first, the object or the idea for the sculpture. So yeah, maybe talk a little bit about your practice per se.
So yeah, like with my practice, when you ask about the object or the idea, it varies really. Sometimes I might find an object and I might hold on to this object for years. Or some of it might just be like, I come up with this idea and I start searching for an object that's going to fit with that idea. But like I was telling Michael, during the whole shutdown, I started just working with the things that I had already had. So I didn't have to go out searching for things. So it was kind of like, I started limiting myself to what I had. So then different things started happening in that time. But as far as like time frame and like how I go about it, I might do a little bit every day. I might, a lot of times I'm able to put more time in on like weekends to do stuff. But like each piece might take a little bit longer time, like some might be finished in a day or two. Where one I'm working on now, I've been working on for 2 years. So it's just kind of like, I get to these moments where I kind of need to stop and set it aside, and then I can work on something else. So I might have like 5 pieces at a time going, but it's kind of like waiting for like that next object or something that's gonna fill that void that is existing that I need to fill. So it kind of changes really.
Yeah, 368 days, is that what you said?
385
Oh,
days.
85 days. Okay.
385 days,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's interesting because, you know, this painting is something that I painted on every day, but, you know, that could be 12 hours, that could be 2 minutes, right? You know, I think that like I can only, and I should only, I don't put pressure on myself to work when I'm not feeling like working, you know. I don't think that that's a healthy way to work. I fully, you know, intend to work daily. I have scheduled studio days. I even have scheduled hours, and sometimes it doesn't. You know, I'm just not feeling it, and so I just walk away from it and I do something else. You know, the other day I was in my studio and I was like, you know, I got my house waterproofed, and I'm like, you know, this dirt needs to be shoveled back against the house, and so I went outside and I did that, and you know, I didn't get studio time in, but you know, I felt accomplished. I think that, well, I know that because I work from concepts. Usually, I have a running list of anywhere between 10 and 15 pieces. You know, not necessarily images, but pieces. So this could be film, this could be bronze, this could be lens based, it could be painting, it could be collage, it could be a number of different things. And I have many projects in varying degrees of completion, and some of them are in my studio, and some of them exceed what I can do in my studio. So they're outside of my studio and other places. And so I just kind of leapfrog from one piece to one piece where my interests go. So, you know, I might not want to paint. I mean, I might not want to paint for 2 months, and I can work on some other things and still feel productive. Sometimes, you know, the way that I think is I think in years. So, you know, this year I know that I want to make at least 6 pieces. Those 6 pieces might not be finished until the very end of the year, right? So I show pieces that were created last year or that were finished last year, so that when this year is finished, then I can kind of replace those on the circuit. So it's kind of methodical, I guess, you know, and I try not to overstress myself by overworking myself and creating an imaginary demand, you know. I mean, even if there were a demand, they can wait, you know, because I don't want to get sick. I don't want to, you know, I don't want to hurt myself trying to produce things. You know, I'm supposed to be working from a place of passion. Right. And so,
Once
you know,
it becomes a job, then it becomes less of a.
You get robbed of that passion.
Yep,
exactly.
Right.
And so, so I'm very like aware of how I'm feeling, and you know, I have some very big projects with huge budgets, like huge budgets, and then you know, I have projects with $500 budgets, and you know, I only work on what I feel my energy is going to best be placed for that moment.
Well, I even like the idea of like, you're not feeling it that day to be in the studio, but you're out like shoveling dirt. It's like, it's still kind of this personal time for you.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's very much what the practice is. It's this personal time. It's like, because you're not actually like making like physical work in that time, you're able to still think about it.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah.
Well, I don't sleep. I mean, I keep very late hours,
Doesn't sound
and
healthy.
it's because when I get an idea or when a concept is forming, I'm making it in my head. You know, I don't do anything. I don't pick up a paintbrush. I don't pick up clay or metal. I don't touch anything until it's been fully kind of rendered in my brain. And then once I can see it in my head and I know that it's viable, then I start working, you know. And a lot of times that happens late at night, because that's the only time I really have to myself.
Sure.
You know, in my waking life, we all have responsibilities and obligations that really like command our attention. And when I'm laying down at 12, 1, 2, 3,
Mhm.
my brain is there's just fireworks, because it's the only time that it's quiet. It's the only time that I can think.
Mhm.
And it's when all my ideas seem to happen.
Right.
So, you know,
And I think, Alejandro, for you, is it more of a meditative process, the sketching? And I know you talked a lot about it helping you to work through some things, the process of creating.
It starts out meditative,
Mhm.
or like if I have my sketchbook with me, then I have something to do with my hands, and it grounds me, and I get like an object out of it, and I can be like, look at what I drew. And then, yeah, it starts out meditative. It doesn't stay that way. Like I was listening to all the things that sounded like positive and healthy. Like if you don't want to work necessarily, you don't feel it, you don't force yourself to. And I'm like that too, except after I don't force myself to work, I'm like, you're not passionate enough. You're not working hard enough.
Right.
And
So
then I
then-
also don't sleep.
you just have to work on your, you know,
Yeah.
your inner voice, right? My inner voice is the things that I say to myself, the things that I hear inside my head are extremely positive, right? So I don't know what that's like where you take a day off, right? And then you say, oh man, you're not, it's not real, you know, that's like an imposter kind of thing. But that can be, you know, you can master that, you know. And then I think that once you become the master of that voice, you know, the quality of the time you spend just improves. You know, sometimes it's about the quality more than it is about the quantity of time that you spend. And I remind myself of that all the time, because sometimes I just can't do it. You know, I don't want to do it. I'm just not in a healthy space where I feel like the quality is going to be there. So, you know, I'd rather not sacrifice that. So I take a step back.
I feel like comparatively, I'm like still mentally in a younger place. Like I'm 32, like that's not like super young, but I mature very slowly. But because I mature slowly, the quality of my maturing, I guess, would be good. Or I hope, but no, I feel like you have used the word budget, and I'm like, this guy. Is a professional.
It's a growing word, but,
It's like, what's that?
And I don't, yeah,
so,
I waste so much money.
so Alejandro's work is literally sketches.
Yeah, and I just, yeah, and I have, they're all in here too,
Yeah.
like,
And not in the page order, wherever you are in the book, you grab
There-
and do a sketch.
sometimes
or-
I,
Uh-huh,
there's an order, but I'll just like open a page and it's like, this is blank.
oh, yeah.
Or it might not actually be, like a lot of these sketchbook size drawings have other stuff on the back, like to-do lists, other drawings,
Mhm.
just like people's names that I'm trying to remember.
Yeah.
And so the ones that have stuff on the back, they're twice as expensive.
You'd never be able to recreate that.
Yeah.
That's right. And then, same question to Jared and to Michael, do you sketch these out? Do you have these things fully realized in your head, or it depends on what as you find it, it
Yeah.
dictates it, you
Well,
don't sketch it?
Yeah, like, kind of like him, I build them all in my head.
Mhm.
And like, I mean, I might build it 5 different times in my head before I actually start doing it. Or in the whole process, it might be like, I build it, I don't like it,
Uh-huh,
so I tear it all apart.
uh-huh,
I get back in my head and then I start over again.
right.
Because I've done that a number of times where I've gotten to what like a lot of people might feel like is a finished state, and it's just like, that's not feeling right. So I just cut it all apart and start over. Like a lot of times, I mean, it's a lot of times when I'm doing that, it tends to seem like it's like steel and metal. So luckily I'm able to recycle it. And kind of reform it if I need to. That's one thing I like about like metal and fabricating that way, because if I don't like it, I can cut it apart. And then if I need to put it back together, I can just weld it back together. So that tends to work, but yeah, I totally am just building it constantly in my head. And it's like getting down to little details a lot of times too. It's like, what hardware is gonna work with this? Like, how's that like gonna meet? Like, what's gonna join those two? Is that really the best way to do that? How can I hide this thing? And stuff like that. So it's like all these little tiny details. It's not always just the big picture. So,
And I keep a couple of sketchbooks, but I keep them mostly for writing. I find that when I can articulate it in a way that it makes sense to me, I can envision it better.
Yeah.
A lot of the things that I want to do don't require me drawing them, unless I'm submitting for something that requires drawing. So I don't do a whole lot of sketching in my sketchbook. Typically, the only time I actually sketch in a sketchbook is when I'm like traveling and there's some landscape or something that I have enough time to draw. But my sketchbooks are usually they are ideas and sketches, but just not in the traditional sense. It's a quick little scribble about an idea that could potentially be viable. So at 3 o'clock in the morning,
Right.
when I can't go to sleep, I can just lean over it and write it down. And the next morning I can read it and then kind of flesh it out more. So I write about everything though, everything that I make, everything that I might make. There is I write about at length because I just want to make sure that when I'm talking about this stuff, one, that I understand myself, what I'm trying to do and what I want to do and what I'd like people to get from it, but also I need to do it and resolve it as much as possible so that I can see it. If I can see it, then I can make it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if, following up on that thread, if you would talk a little bit about the time that you allot to working on work and the time that you allot to the business of art.
Yeah.
Which would be documenting your work, figuring out pricing for your work, maybe resourcing or researching resources for the materials that you need, because I'm sure the pandemic has, and supply chain, affected how you can create and what you can use to create. So if you could talk a little bit about that balance of creating, but also doing the business that's necessary for you to be able to create.
Yeah. I would say for me in my practice, it's about 60-40. It's about 60% actively either working on it myself or project managing it if it's a project that requires collaboration and a team of people. The 40% is typically like admin, it's applying for things, it's grant writing, it's research, it's materials, it's all of that stuff, right? I consider that productive time though. I don't see that separate from the making part, if I spend a day where I just do admin, I leave my studio feeling just as satisfied as if I worked on, a painting for the same amount of time. So,
I think that's weird. Some artists I speak with look at that as a resentful moment, right? Like
Yeah.
that is prohibiting me from creating, but in
Yeah.
fact, it's really freeing you up and enabling you to create.
Yeah.
Without that business of it, you couldn't, so.
right, and
Yeah.
if you, let's say you spent 6 hours writing a grant, right? But if you get $30,000, if you get $40,000, that you forget that you spent that 6 hours writing that grant, right? And so, I'm hyper aware that, I'm more likely to get a no than a yes, but when I get the yes, I forget how much time I spent on the admin aspects of the practice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead and follow up with that, Jared.
I mean, mine is kind of, it depends on the time of year, really, as far as like the admin type stuff. I mean, it's continuing going, but I feel like there's different times of year where it's kind of a little bit more active.
Because you're
than others.
teaching too.
Yeah, teaching, I mean, a lot of times calls are at different times of the year, so you kind of like set that up in different moments of the time. Taxes are in a certain time of year, that takes up a lot of admin time.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of that stuff for me happens late at night. And even just like the writing portion, that happens late at night. It's kind of like my time to think and like focus that way, where like I'm also one that doesn't sleep, so I might stay up late doing that stuff, but then I might be up at 5 o'clock in the morning in the studio.
Right.
So it's like, I like to start my day a lot of times with the whole making kind of stuff, because it's like this kind of wake up for me. It's like my time to like get things going, like get into my head. And then like, especially with me for teaching, like I can start creatively and then I can go into my day creative. So it's like when I'm in the classroom, then I'm like active and I'm already got my brain going for being creative. So I think a lot of times that works. So it's hard for me to put a percentage on it, I think. And as far as like the logistics or the administrative part of like materials and costs and budgets, that might be more of like a monthly kind of decision for me. And it kind of comes down to budgets type stuff.
I know last night the conversation was about bronze and,
Yeah.
when the price fluctuates on those kinds of materials, it's nice when you can find things,
Yeah.
but if you're actually trying to source them to create something or cast something, then that's gonna affect what you're able to produce,
Luckily
or for
for
how much.
Luckily for me, I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
Working in an institution, I have that kind of readily available.
That's good. Yeah.
So that kind of stuff, like, I don't worry about as much, like, it comes down to a lot of the smaller materials, but still, they end up being found, like, a lot of the plastics and acrylics I have, they come from a dumpster.
Yeah.
I just dumpster dive.
Mhm.
So it's just like trying to find a way to save some money. So it's like, there's $1,000 worth of plastic in this dumpster. I'm gonna go get it. So it kind of varies too.
I'm about like maybe 5% the responsible stuff. That's like the core of my like struggle. Like, how do I connect myself with the world around me?
Right.
Like just trying to function, it takes like everything.
Yeah.
Like in order to, like build a website and like organize anything and do that stuff, I'm completely reliant on Adderall. It's prescription though, so it's fine. Like I have a doctor, but I guess maybe part of the reason I like sketching and I like taking something that's normally just like scraps and using that as like the foundation for like my art is because I like to deconstruct things, because I look at myself and how difficult it is to function and keep things going and like put up a professional display of something. Like all I can see is the story and the narrative behind that, like the human being trying to make this professional appearance work. And yeah, so about 5% of that. And yeah.
How would you feel about like an intern? Would you trust an intern to help with some of that admin stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like anyone who's like, I'll help you, I'll be like, really? Thanks.
That's right. I mean, we talk about that a lot here, that, we have interns who work in teams on things. There's, each of you bring us, a particular set of skills to the table, right? And then maybe trading that with someone else. Find a photographer in your world who can take photographs, good photographs of your work, because that's the first impression that you make to a jury. And if your images are not clear and easy to understand, then it's difficult for a juror to say yes to your work, right? And then also writing a grant. If you're not a good writer, find somebody who is. Artist statements are the thing, right? So find somebody who can proofread that for you or whatever.
Well, I think that's a superpower, I mean, that's a superpower, being able to meet people, to talk to people, to interface with people, and identify like what value or what strengths they bring into your creative life, right? Just, aside from being friends and colleagues and those things, this person is a really great photographer, this person, routinely gets hired by the museums in the area that I work at. This person is a grant writer, this person is whatever they are, and leveraging those relationships to produce the highest quality everything, right? I mean, it is a superpower, and it takes some time to really kind of foster that community and get people to agree to do them. And if you can pay them, great, but even, getting them to say yes when you can't pay them, right? I
Or
think,
trade something, maybe you have something to offer too, doesn't always have to be your art. Maybe it's another skill that you have that you can trade, but there's value in that, absolutely. And that's something that carries through. I mean, Roy is a nonprofit, and we have a board of people with various skills that we bring to the table and bring to bear for Roy. So we want people who, are connected to money, who are creators, who are able to market, who know finance, so that we have all of those skills at our disposal. So, yeah. I wonder what's integral to the work that you do. In other words, what's something that you need to have in order to be able to create the work that you do. That could be something that's tangible. It could be a tangible thing, but what's integral to the work that you do?
Time.
Yeah.
I think that's a big thing. It's just as not having to be somebody that works a 40-hour week or so, and just that balance of work, life, and art. I think trying to find that time a lot of times can be tricky. I mean, as every artist knows, it takes time to make stuff. So you need that time, and that's very important.
and I just piggyback on that and just say time off, right? Because I think travel for me is kind of an integral part and essential, because I get to step outside of the box that I'm in here. So this particular series is rooted in the idea in terms of like a Black man, right? Walking around as a Black man. But most people can only interface with me in what I call the big three, an athlete, an entertainer, or a criminal. That's what we see predominantly, in the media we consume, especially if you don't have relationships with people who look like me. Then I live in a world where people project onto me. Where that changes is when I leave the borders of this country, right? So I'm addicted to travel. I've been to 40 countries so far, and and when I leave the country, you know, instead of people, you know, clutching their bags and walking away from me, people are asking him to hold their bag so they can come and take pictures with me. Or instead of people grabbing their kids and, you know, kind of being tense in a quick walk by, people are giving me babies and asking me to kiss them. And like, and so what I'm getting at is that I leave the country and I come back more multifaceted. You know, I experience myself differently. And when I come back, there are some things that just become more or less acceptable. But, you know, my self-awareness, how I see myself in terms of being a world citizen, not necessarily a United States citizen, has increased. And those things create the kind of criticism that I depict in my work, you know, those experiences. So time off for me is extremely important.
I also choose time. No, like really, like time, it's the only thing we have. And I think after my dad died, I started to appreciate that more, because the time is passing by, even though we think we're being conscious in it. It's like, man, while he was still around, I should have taken more time to just talk with him. Like, what would I give now for just 5 minutes talking to him? And it's just now after the fact, it seems that that perspective is so clear. And so I took that perspective and I applied it to my day-to-day life. So I work at Kroger, and I basically started working there because, like, oh, my dad is sick. I need to get a job. I need one just right now. I don't care what it is, just need to function and not be reliant on anyone or whatnot. And so I just ended up continuing to work there throughout the whole time he was sick. And then afterwards, it's like, okay, that's over, and yet I'm still here. And I don't know, after a moment of clarity, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna work part-time now. So now I only work 2 days a week, even though like I guess that makes budgets even harder, but it's okay because I don't even think about it.
You have more time to create work.
Yes.
Or,
Otherwise, like I wouldn't have been able to like do all the frames and all this stuff.
right.
Yeah.
Well, time is the most important resource I think we have, you know. It's the one thing, we can spend all the money in the world, whether your budget is, you know, good or not, but you can always get that money back. But the one thing you can't get back is the time, you know, so.
So I wonder, in your creative process, do you take the time to step back and, you know, reflect on it? Do you take time to talk with other artists or other creatives and get perspectives on your work? How do you know when your work is done, or how do you know when this is working and that's not working?
Yeah, all my thoughts are done on the front end. When I'm done with the piece, like I'm right on the next one. Like I don't have any time to really reflect. I also don't spend very much time with other artists. I very much like spend my time with quote unquote normal people, if there's such a thing. And I think my reason for choosing to be in environments with normal people is because normal people ask really specific questions, and the way that and the work that I'm making is very much about like all of us, and there are many more normal people than there are artists in our country. So I do see us as a separate species altogether, just for the record. I don't know if that's good or bad, but I think that when I spend my time with normal folks, it informs my work in a way that I can't get in an environment with other artists, because we're so cerebral and we're so, you know, there's a lot going on, you know, and regular people are just like, I don't like it. The nose is too big, you know, the eye is crooked. Why is this gray, you know? And it's like, oh, you know, I didn't think about that. But even if the nose isn't crooked. There is something that's bothering them that they can't quite articulate that can help inform me,
Sure.
you know, how to make this work more impactful. So I found that just spending my time with, you know, I open my studio up on Saturdays to folks who want to come, and if they write, if they blog, if they paint, if they, you know, not, you know, they just dabble, or, you know, if they rap or sing or write poetry. You know, I have sometimes 12 people in my studio, and it's just a lot of noise, and it's a lot of people, and it just feeds me, and I can work for 14 hours, 16 hours, you know, and it's a recipe that's really working for me right now.
I'd say I do spend a little bit of time at the end of like reflection. But I don't know if I ever really consider something done, I guess. And part of that is just like my process, really. It's like, oh, something else could be added to this. This could be taken away. Or, oh, this part isn't working for this piece as much as it might actually work for this piece. So sometimes pieces actually get dismantled for another one. So there might not actually be like a true finish for me. And then as far as talking to other artists and that, I feel like it's not on a regular basis, but I have a network of people, and a lot of them are kind of across the country. So like those conversations might happen through text. It's like send a photo and it's like, oh, what do you think about this? And it's like, and I think a lot of times the ones I talk to, at least, they're like, yeah, that's not working. What did you do that for? It doesn't get like too deep. I mean, it starts out pretty basic, but then it can get a little deeper. But so I think it's not on a regular basis, like a day-to-day kind of like actual interactions. It's kind of this network of digital interactions. But also I think it's a little different for me as like an educator too, because like I work with artists every day. They're just at like a different level. But even like some of the more advanced students that I have, like I might actually like talk to them about my work. And, like we start to get into a dialogue about all that. So, and that's actually really interesting too, to like have those conversations of like younger artists coming up and kind of like just what their perspective of things are. So
we have critiques here on the very complicated. It's the third Thursday of the odd month. So sometimes I sit in on them. I'm not a creator, so I don't have anything to contribute really, but I'm fascinated by the conversations that I witness of that, right? Like, this isn't working, I don't know why, the nose is wrong, by that shade of blue. There might be a whole thing of, you know, I saw this on your Instagram and I really like that, but I don't like that you added that extra layer to it, or you added this other object in that, or, you know, so it is very interesting. I mean, I marvel at it. Y'all are so vulnerable all the time to people and their opinions, whether solicited or not. So it really is part of that. It's very interesting, that process.
My mom tells me I need to use more color. So that's like, I got all my critique kind of covered. So it's like,
That's the blue, and now some red. And
yes,
yeah,
it's like, look,
yeah.
on blue and red.
Yeah. All the things now, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, listen to your mother, that's what I would
See,
say.
she's a normal person.
Yeah.
That's the best kind. You
That
know?
is the best kind.
That's the best kind.
That's right. Well, I have a few more questions for you, but I want to make sure that people in the audience, if you all have questions, feel free to ask some things from our conversation. But I wanted to know where you're going next and where Roy is in that continuum. So a lot of times artists, this might be their very first show in a gallery space. It might be their 13th show in a gallery space, but at Roy, it's emerging artists. So artists that are not represented by galleries, that are maybe just finding themselves or on a different trajectory than they were before. So where does Roy fit in where you are and where are you going next? Maybe you have another show coming up or you're thinking about, you know, a new body of work or something like that. So now's your chance to talk about that a little
I want money and power
bit.
and
And in that order.
yeah, and so Roy's helping me appear legitimate so that I can really sell myself and get more money, more power, just pure ambition. Just I don't.
We
I
love
didn't,
being part of that world. Order.
I didn't-
That's awesome.
I didn't come here to make friends. I came here to win.
Working.
Yeah. But I've had some other shows, like last month, I had a solo show at Sean Christopher Gallery.
Mhm.
And that was nice.
Yeah,
It's very supportive.
yeah, John was here last night.
Yeah.
So it's nice that, yes.
Yeah. So
And
then
what's next? Do you have a show coming up?
I,
or-
I think so,
Mhm.
because John, did I say Sean before? I meant John. It doesn't matter.
Uh-huh. It's a Sean Christopher Gallery.
Yeah, I
His
get that
name is
mixed
John.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So John's curating a show
Oh.
for like surreal art,
Mhm.
which I kind of am by default. I shy away from that. And so then I'm gonna have a piece in that. And it's going to be somewhere.
Great.
It'll in the world. I don't know where. I forget.
He was posted on that.
Yeah.
Okay, Jared?
I mean, I've had shows before, so
Mhm.
I'm definitely not new to it. And then as far as really what is next, I don't know.
Dumpster,
Yeah.
whatever we find in the dumpster. I don't know.
I mean, so far, this has been my first show of this year.
Mhm.
It's kind of the only one I have on the books so far. So it's just back to the studio. And right now, we just went on summer break, so I got 2 months off to kind of just do what I want.
Time, they get some time, yeah.
So that, like, the summers are pretty important for me for that time.
Yeah.
So I can really focus on stuff.
Yeah.
But as far as other shows, I mean, I'm constantly submitting things and proposals and whatnot, so just crossing my fingers, I guess.
Yeah, so I think Roy G. Biv was kind of a manifestation for me. You know, last year, I did a TED Talk last year, and it's titled "Everybody's Racist and It's Okay." It's really about bias and prejudice, but like, there's a line that I say, you know, actually, I do air quotations, and I'm Roy G. Biv, you know, Roy G. Biv. And then we walk in here, I don't know, maybe a few months ago, and then there was a call. And I was like, well, you know, is this like a manifestation? Did I speak this? You know, let me apply. And I applied, and I was lucky enough and fortunate enough to be able to show. So I think that, you know, this being able to show here kind of tells me that manifestation is real. You know, you can really speak things into becoming. And I believe that before this, but this, I mean, how much more literal could it be?
Right.
As far as exhibitions, I have an exhibition every month this year, except November and December. I have a residency in New York in July. I'm like all over the place. You know, museum shows, gallery shows, you name it. So I'm always working. I'm always traveling. I do a lot of. We talked about some visiting artist stuff and some artist talks and maybe some crits, and so I'm just fully immersed. It's like kind of taking over my life, which is great. I mean, I chose it for myself, and you know, in between all of that stuff, you know, I'm still actively applying. You know, I've already gotten 3 grants this year, and those grants were pretty significant amounts of money to build like very specific projects. So so the work that I'm making they're all coming from that list that I keep, you know, and you know, I write down how much it's gonna cost to make them, and, you know, sometimes it's gonna take $20,000 to make this one. Sometimes it's gonna take 500. So I just kind of match the opportunities with the pieces that I've conceived, and, you know, just an exercise in patience. You know, you can't build it all at the same time, and you can't always make it in the order that you conceived it, but the fact that I can make it, you know, and I can find someone who believes in the idea enough to give me the money to make it. And so so I just keep pushing, you know.
The next right thing.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Questions for each other, or anybody in the audience who has questions? Questions for me, something that we didn't go over that you wanted to be sure we would go over? Leaving no stone unturned, just in case there's something.
I got one for you. Like we were talking about grants and everything, I guess. Do you want to talk about kind of your process for that?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
how
sure.
you go about that and what you're going for during that process?
Yeah, so I usually start locally, right? I live in Cincinnati, so so I look at the organizations where I live that give grants, and then I expand that to state, you know. Like I keep a kind of a list of national grants as well. And then I look at, you know, what's possible. I know I can't apply for everything. Some of them are very comprehensive. I mean, when I'm writing these things, I can't do anything else, you know. And so so I'll say, okay, if it's a creative capital grant, that's $90,000, right? I'm gonna write, if I write this grant, you know, chances are I'm not gonna get it, and I haven't in the 4 times I've applied for it. But I have to like tell myself I'm gonna apply for it a couple of times, and then I'm not gonna apply for it for a couple of years, because I just don't have the endurance to keep going through the process. And you would think it would just be a copy and paste, but they change it every year, and each grant requires something different. So so the ones locally I apply for every year. The ones in the state I apply for every year. And then I look at the states that border where I live, so that if I can get it, I don't have to travel so far. So so that's Kentucky, that's Indiana. And you know, I recently got a grant in Kentucky with the organization there. So I think the process for me is finding them, seeing if what I do matches what they're asking for, and then just, you know, taking my time. I mean, I believe that my work is able to sway whoever's making the decisions, but, you know, it's just about, you know, having the confidence to go through with it. I think that I would say in the last 5 years, I've probably applied for 25 grants. And in the last 5 years, I've gotten 6, right? You know, that's a lot of no's. And so in that time, I can't get back. I mean, we're talking sometimes a week, 2 weeks.
Right.
So, you know, it's an investment in yourself. And, you know, I feel like I'm in a place where, because I actively write, because I'm in the practice of writing, a lot of the stuff I already have written, right? And so when they have the grant specific language, I can say, okay, where in this running document that I keep for this series is this information? And I can copy it, paste it, and then customize it, and it's less of a burden. But I think that if you get in the practice of writing about everything that you make, even if you don't show it to anyone, when it's time to apply for the grants, you know, you don't feel so overwhelmed. And that's really, really, really helped me. I have things that I've written in 2018 that I still find useful in my grant applications in 2022.
Because I feel like a lot of times for younger artists, they don't understand like the grant process for like being an artist. I think a lot of them just kind of expect that they're just going to sell all this stuff and that's how they're going to be an artist.
Yeah.
So I think that's just really important for them to know.
Well, that happens for people too, though. I mean, there are people out there who make it and sell it, and I envy them.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not one of those people. I wish I could be. It'd be a hell of a lot easier, you know? But there are also some resources in like the public library. At least I know in Cincinnati, they actually do a grant writing workshop,
Yeah.
and it's free, and they have dedicated staff and dedicated terminals just for grant research and for grant writing. And I took one of the workshops because I knew, you know, that I was gonna be kind of veering on this path, and I found it useful. So
Yeah, there's some different organizations in Indianapolis that have workshops like that, just specifically for artists.
yeah,
Ohio Arts Council offers those kinds of grant application and other business of the arts workshops, and they post them on their YouTube
yeah,
channel. Greater Columbus Arts Council offers things like that too. So yeah, but that, I mean, that's part of it too, isn't it? I mean, even just knowing where to look for resources
right,
is obviously the first step. So yeah, well, you kids out there listening to this, yeah, the library is a great place to start.
yeah,
Your local arts council is a great place to start.
Yeah.
Networking with other artists is a great place to start.
yeah,
Who's done what before? The artists that were here in, I believe it was January, we're all talking about residencies and applying for those, and it was a great conversation to have that network of other artists to say, don't apply for that residency, it's not what they tell you it's gonna be, right? Or, oh, this one was really wonderful, I had a great time here, try that one. And so that network is really, you know, it's very nice to have
Yeah.
that people who, your tribe, right?
Yeah.
Who speak that language, who wanna share that information. So,
So,
and then when you go to a residency, there are plenty of people there who can point you in the right direction. So
Sure.
that's, I mean, that's one of the beautiful things I think about that, or, you know, any kind of art incubator or any of those things. You know, it's a wealth of information.
You should do more things.
Yeah.
Honestly, for me, like I love writing, and I love just writing about my art and all that stuff. But I think the reason I don't apply for more of these opportunities is kind of because I'm afraid that even if I do get it, the time might come for me to like put the work in, and then maybe I just like won't mentally be there. Like I don't want to say like, oh, I'll just be too lazy, but I might just be totally burnt out. I might just be completely inundated with just regular day-to-day life that I don't have the energy and the focus and the passion to actually like follow through.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this. I mean, that's true for me too. You know, I apply for things that I'm not ready to like execute all the time, you know, because there's a high likely and high probability that it's going to be a no anyway. But on the off chance that I get it, then you can turn it down. You know, you don't have to accept it. But you know, I think if you're not mentally in a place where you can do it, then it's okay to say, you know, I can't do it. You know, or you can say, sure, I'll do it and figure out a way. You know, I mean, but I actively apply for things that I know I'm not ready for, because you know, if I'm gonna get better, if I'm gonna, you know, get the money and the power, right?
Yeah, I need that too.
Then you know, sometimes I need to be backed into a corner and I need to like perform, you know.
Yeah.
And growth comes from the discomfort of knowing like you might not be ready, but them not knowing that you
Yes.
might not be ready.
Well, thank you all very much for your conversation today and just being open about and responding to the questions that we had for you. We try to keep this at about an hour, and so we're at our time. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you all for your kind attention.